Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and I am so excited about today's guest because I feel like he's such a perfect example of how exciting of a time period that we're in right now. Being able to see technology and AI and all other sorts of entrepreneurial solutions rapidly change traditional marketplaces. My only complaint is that I wish today's entrepreneur chose tennis instead of golf because he absolutely is totally transforming the golf industry with some really cool tech, some really cool solutions. Let me introduce you to him. His name is Ryan Walsh. Ryan is an experienced entrepreneur who spent a decade steering his digital marketing agency before diving headfirst into the golf tech scene. As the founder and CEO of Fairway Finder, he's revolutionizing how golfers find and book their tee times by offering a single, streamlined platform that not only simplifies the booking process, but also introduces an innovative waitlist feature for the most sought-after courses. Born and raised in San Diego, Ryan's love for golf runs deep, which shows in his commitment to making Fairway Finder a game changer for golfers everywhere. Whether he's hitting the fairways or tapping away at his keyboard, which I'm convinced he likes both equally, Ryan is committed to making golf more accessible and enjoyable for all. He's got quite a few entrepreneurial stories dating all the way back to childhood and college, so this is going to be a fun conversation, not just about how technology is changing the golf game, but also how Ryan has picked up so many lessons in business and in life through entrepreneurship. So I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Ryan Walsh. All right, Ryan, I am so very excited that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Heck yes. I know that you've got stories dating quite some time back as an entrepreneur, and I'm excited to hear all of them today. But first things first, take us beyond the bio. Who's Ryan? How'd you start doing all these cool things?
Oh, man. Okay. Well, let's see. Like you said, I'm a San Diego native, so have lived here or grew up here. Went to high school here, college, did a brief stint in Colorado back in kind of that COVID era. But other than that, San Diego's been my home, and, I love all the hobbies that you can kind of take up here. So golf is a big one, surfing, it's very entrepreneurial, and maybe that's kind of a quick overview.
Yeah, I love that. Take us back to your first entrepreneurial endeavor, because I think what's really cool is that I'm 17 years into my entrepreneurial journey, and I've picked things up from every single endeavor. I think that your background, it looks like one thing has led to the other, but of course it wasn't necessarily linear. Give us that entrepreneurial background.
Yeah, man, there's probably some earlier entrepreneurial endeavors than I'll say here, but kind of the first one that I really remember is, I'm in an internship right out of college, still looking for a full-time job, and I think I'm making maybe $400 a week or something like that at this internship, and I have an $800 a month rent payment I need to make, so I'm like, okay, well, I need to make some more money to get by here. So on the side of my internship, which was at a digital marketing agency, I started doing surf lessons. So like I said, I'm a big surfer, and all I did is I created a website, started running some Google ads to the website. And before I knew it, probably like 3 or 4, lessons a day are coming through, and I'm able to charge $100, $120 per lesson. And, at the time, making a few $100s a day was pretty much life-changing. So that kind of showed me a few things, like, how impactful you can be as an entrepreneur, and just the power of digital marketing, and kind of made me fall in love with digital marketing, and specifically kind of that direct to consumer marketing. So that's kind of what kicked all everything off. And, I've kind of not stopped creating new ventures from there.
Yeah, Ryan, hearing your story, I often think about it because it was my experience as well, is that going to college, when I decided to start my business, I started my first real business, I always say, while I was in school. And I hated that term. Everyone would always ask me, are you going to get a real job? And here we are all these years later, and I hope I've proven that entrepreneurship is indeed a real job. Where did you navigate that? What was family's reaction, friends' reaction to the fact that you dove so headfirst into the world of entrepreneurship?
That's a good question. Sometimes I still feel like some family members and friends maybe don't think I have a real job. I've never really, I guess for a year out of college, I did work for a digital marketing agency in a full-time role. But other than that, yeah, I've always been doing my own thing. And I don't know. I think you kind of just got to keep your head down and see how far you can get, and then eventually people kind of get on board with you and just see that it's kind of the right journey for you.
Yeah, one thing you already called out is I love how you went straight to how much you love digital marketing. I would imagine that it plays a lot into the growth of Fairway Finder, which we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. But talk to us about that digital marketing agency, because it's something that it gets your feet wet in so many different industries, working with so many different clients. I'm sure you were putting together campaigns that they all live in your head now. You have a catalog of what works and what doesn't work. What were some of those perspectives and experiences you picked up?
Yeah, for sure. So actually, I think out of college, I think working for an agency is a great call. I mean, one, you have to work really hard, but with that, you're going to get exposed to, a number of different, marketing tactics and channels and things like that. But you're also going to work with a ton of different types of businesses, whether it's a service business, an e-commerce business, whatever, a big $100 million plus business, or a small mom and pop, doing less than $1 million a year business. And you just get exposed to a lot of different things, which I think can kind of help you, hone in on what you even want to do. And what I pretty quickly realized is I started working at a big agency in downtown San Diego, and they kind of served that enterprise level client. And I didn't know it at the time, but looking back, I realized, I didn't really like that, just because there's so many people, there's so many decision makers, there's a lot of bureaucracy. And I really liked working for small businesses where, you were, in a lot of situations, you're the main decision maker or working with the main decision maker, and you can just move really fast and iterate and just make a lot of tangible progress. So I was always very drawn to working with small businesses. And yeah, I don't know if that will ever change, but now I'm kind of in the startup world, which I guess is a small business in itself right now. So
Yeah, I'm going to pick on that a little bit. I love paying attention to the way that we all use words. And you called out 3 distinct markets, all with 3 distinct growth patterns and bureaucracy or lack of bureaucracy. You talked about the enterprise level, the small businesses. And I love how we do kind of have a tendency to separate startup world from traditional small businesses. Talk to me about the mindset behind that, because you've obviously worked within all 3 of those realms.
Oh man, yeah. So I mean, these definitions, I never quite questioned them myself, but the way that I think about it, startup is different than a small business in that, these things I'm going to say might be totally wrong, but I think a startup is something with, massive potential. A lot of times you need initial capital to get it up and running, but the real goal is to make it into something, much bigger. And then the way that I think about small business is it's more of a kind of long road, slow growth, more manageable, can often be, financed with its own cash flow, things like that. So I don't know, that's kind of the way that I think about it. And then enterprise, I just think, massive $100 million plus a year company, huge departments that you're working with and in. And it's a good question. I think I need to actually probably more clearly define all of those three different terms. So,
well, I will say, hearing you here on the fly try to define them, the way that you define that startup, I think it reveals so much about the way that you're viewing Fairway Finder, because you went straight to those big, ambitious, lofty goals. And so with that in mind, take us to the beginning of Fairway Finder. Okay, so you're loving golf, you live in sunny San Diego, but that's different from starting a business and having tech solve a real world problem that you're experiencing. Most people have experienced it, Ryan, but they don't take action on it. What did that look like for you?
Yeah, no, it's hard for me to experience pain and not want to address it with some sort of business venture. So, I was experiencing it myself. I'm an avid golfer. I have a 2-year-old at home and another on the way. So the golf is happening less, but I still love it just as much. But, a few years ago, I was able to play a lot more golf, booking tee times all the time. COVID brought a ton of new golfers to the game. So it was just really, really hard to get a tee time, and all of the technology surrounding it was very antiquated too, which maybe I didn't even quite pick up on at the time. But anyways, my goal was really to get a tee time, and a tee time at ideally the best courses in my area. So I'm taking lessons from the head pro at the Crossings. It's a local course here in San Diego, and I'm kind of talking to him about things in between swings, whatever. And out of curiosity, I'm like, well, how many cancellations do you guys get a day? In the back of my mind, I'm thinking, well, if they get a bunch of these cancellations, maybe I could figure out a way to snag these last minute cancellations. And he didn't know off the top of his head, but he ends up sending me a spreadsheet of their last year or so of cancellation data. And so I get home, run the numbers on that, and basically find that on average for their course, they were seeing about 50 cancellations a day. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's a lot of cancellations. And it could be, one person in the foursome canceling. It could be the entire foursome. But there was 50 cancellations a day happening. So my immediate thought was, okay, how can we build some sort of technology surrounding this to alert people when these cancellations happen? Because what I was doing is I was going onto the course's booking site, and just, while I'm working or whatever, I keep up another monitor, and every 10 minutes, maybe I'd refresh it and see if anything, canceled and was open, and I'd book it. And I had a lot of success doing that, but it just felt like I was wasting a lot of time. And I wish that there was just kind of, some sort of technology that would do that for me. So that's actually the first product we built, and it was called Tee Time Alerts. And it did just that. It sent alerts when there was cancellations. And a lot of times, those are happening 24 hours to 48 hours before tee time. But I'm not a huge proactive planner. So that was kind of a perfect window for me to find a tee time at a really good course and book it. And all my friends were very thankful that I was finding these last minute tee times and snagging them. So yeah, that's kind of where it started. But yeah, maybe I'll pause for a second.
Yeah, it's really cool to hear that, actually, because Ryan, where my head goes, obviously I love business. When you tell that story, is initially I was thinking about Fairway Finder merely as something that serves the golfers. But actually what I'm hearing is you starting it with the conversation with the instructor of saying, you guys have all these cancellations, which one presents an opportunity for last minute golfers like you to jump in, but also for these facilities to always fill their greens. How do you flesh that out? I'd love to hear that side of it, because one of my earliest business lessons was figuring out who's your customer. It's not necessarily the person who is seeing it. My first business was a soccer blog. My customers weren't my readers. My customers were my advertisers. I learned that lesson early. How do you navigate those waters?
Totally. I mean, I'm still figuring this out, but what I realize is there's value on both sides. There's value for the golfer who's getting the last minute tee time. That, again, at the time, that's all I cared about. And then what I've since learned and really become kind of a student of the golf industry is, that golf courses, need to fill up their tee sheet and get people on their course. So there's a lot of value there as well. But to kind of continue where that went from there. So that's kind of the initial product we built. But then in doing that, what I kind of realized is people would come on, they'd set up their alerts, they'd get the cancellations, but there was no way for them to come and do an initial search to see what was available already. So we kind of wanted to go a step back and actually just be like the first place that people would go to actually just see, every course is in one spot, see what was available. And then if nothing was available, then they could create that alert and wait for a cancellation. And in that thought process there, we realized that's actually kind of the bigger vision, is being that go-to first place that golfers go to find a golf course and a tee time. And that's kind of where Fairway Finder was born.
Yeah, when I think about Fairway Finder, especially going on your website, first things that I want to call out, Ryan, is it's beautiful. Every single thing that you and your team develop looks so much like the finished product, like you've been around for more than a decade. The second thing that really stands out to me is I really get, as a consumer, and I don't play golf, mind you, so I haven't seen what's out there in the golf marketplace, but what stands out to me is it almost feels like the kayak.com for golfers, because kayak.com is great. They changed the game. We didn't have to check American Airlines versus JetBlue versus all these different websites. It checks it for us and then sends us there to book them. Talk to me about the thought process, because there were probably a lot of different ways you could go about it, but it seems to me from the outside looking in that that's sort of the model that you settled on.
Totally. Yeah. So that's a great analogy there. I think the best analogy, and maybe I'm a little biased in that I use Google Flights. I kind of assume most people use Google Flights to book their flights. I think that's probably the best analogy. And here's kind of the comparison in the golf world right now. So we're not the first company to think of a tee time marketplace. There are other tee time marketplaces, but their business model, I think, is fundamentally wrong in that they only include courses, or they only list courses tee times if that course, I'm going to simplify this, but if that course pays them to include them in the marketplace. So what happens is, especially with golf being as popular as it is right now, is all of these courses that can sell out and get their tee sheet full from sunrise to sunset. They don't need Golf Now, or Golf Now is one of the competitors, but they don't need a marketplace really, because they can fill up their tee sheet on their own. So what you end up with is these marketplaces that just have really bad coverage. And think about this in terms of airlines. Like, think if you went to Google Flights and Google Flights only included, Spirit Airlines, United, and Frontier. They only had 3 airlines, but they didn't have American, Alaska, all the other ones. Like, it wouldn't be very useful because you want to see, all the different options, right? Like whether you're price sensitive or you want a direct route, whatever it is. Like, golf is similar in that, we want variety. Golfers don't like just playing the same course over and over again. A lot of golfers, I've actually kind of done a quick study on this, is they're willing to drive, 45 minutes to a golf course, which here in San Diego would open up probably 40 to 50 golf courses within that range. And most golfers right now are only considering maybe a handful. And it's really, really hard to kind of compare those all in one spot. So those are some of the pain points. And I think a good analogy is Google Flights. And so that's what we're trying to be is the Google Flights, but for golf.
Yeah, Ryan, you've absolutely killed our chances of getting sponsored by United Airlines, lumping them in with Spirit and who was it, Frontier, that you lumped them in with?
I do that for a reason because like I said, the best, most valuable course, the course that's less than $100, but it's a great value. Those courses aren't on these marketplaces. So all you get is kind of the bottom of the barrel. And then you get, maybe I should use Delta. I think Delta is maybe rated higher than United, but you get bottom of the barrel and then you get ultra premium, but there's nothing in between. You don't get the Southwest, you don't get Alaska, you don't get all of those ones. So that's kind of the opportunity at hand here.
Yeah, I want to talk about the tech then, because I think this is such an important thing that makes Fairway Finder not only different, but especially powerful, is because where I'm sure most listeners' minds would go, especially we all look at the potential barriers in any business and industry, and they might be thinking, Ryan, how the heck are you going to tap into and integrate with all these different golf courses? It sounds to me like you found a way to essentially crawl and you do the hunting, or obviously the tech does the hunting in the background. So are we talking about integrations, or is that just some sort of tech that you guys have built behind the scenes?
Yeah, so slowly over time, I think we will start to integrate with all these systems, but I wasn't going to ask for permission from all these different people. It's a very fragmented system in golf. There's not like one booking system that all the courses use and I can just go knock on their door. It's very fragmented. So it just wasn't feasible to do this and go around and ask all these different systems to integrate and for their permission. So what we do is we crawl the publicly available data across all these different courses booking systems. And then we just list those on our platform. A golfer, again, they have their one-stop shop. They can see every golf course, all the tee times. And then once they find their time, then they get directed to the course's website to book from there. But yeah, we had to build out our own technology to figure out how to do all that monitoring. And it definitely was took a lot of legwork and some budget, but it was worth it. And now we have a really good system that we can scale up.
Yeah, that's very cool. I have to ask you, while you're here, we're talking business, obviously, I've got to ask you about business model and revenue plans, because there's so many different ways to monetize any business. I think all too often we get stuck in these traditional boxes of selling services or having a physical product. But I learned through a soccer blog that, holy cow, you can monetize in 50 different ways. Where's your mind go when you think about current monetization opportunities as well as future?
For sure. So I think this will evolve over time as we kind of learn what works and what doesn't. And I think there's things that we're not even thinking about. So I don't have all the right answers right now. I know that. But where we're currently looking is one, making the golf course the customer seems to be the biggest opportunity. So we do list all the golf courses by default. That ensures that comprehensive coverage that we want. But then what we're going to do is give, a select, let's say 10% of golf courses in each city, the opportunity to work with us as a featured course. And so, we'd have our search results, but then we would feature those courses, at the top and more prominently. Maybe they have some more enhanced content like videos and maybe more imagery. And actually what we're doing right now is we're actually going out to these courses and helping them shoot video and photo, because a lot of them just don't have that good of content. So, we kind of want to show them in the best light possible. Not to go down that rabbit hole too much, but I kind of compare that to like Airbnb when they were starting. They figured out that a big reason people weren't booking these rooms and whatnot is because, people were taking photos with their iPhone and they didn't look good. So they started sending out photographers to go do that for them. But anyways, back to your question. So making the golf course the customer. Number 2 is advertising. As we get more and more golfers on the platform using our free search engine, there's going to be a lot of different golf brands, whether it's an apparel brand, a golf club brand, whatever it is, they want to reach these avid golfers who are, playing a lot of golf. And then lastly, that alerting functionality I talked about. So like I said, that's valuable to both the golfer and the golf course. So with that tee time alerts tool that we initially built, the first model there was that we would actually charge the golfer, and we charge them $8 a month or $60 a year. And so we're going to continue with that model, continue to charge the golfers there, and that'll be our third revenue stream. And like I said, there's definitely other revenue streams that are going to become clear as time goes on, but that's kind of where our head is at right now.
Yeah, so cool to hear the way that you're thinking about all these things, Ryan. I'm so appreciative of the transparency and just the generosity in you sharing that. I want to ask you about this because obviously the stuff we're talking about, it goes beyond just your business. You obviously have your finger on the pulse of the golf industry. And I would imagine that you're also looking beyond even just golf, borrowing from, you mentioned Airbnb. That is such a perfect case study for the type of thinking that you're applying to your solution. How's AI fit into all of this? Obviously, AI is disrupting so many different industries. And just think about the data set that you're amassing as you're crawling all of these different golf courses. I imagine that there's some role for AI to play, whether it's helping you guys internally, helping your customers, helping the golf courses. How's that factoring into what you're doing?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's kind of a couple of different routes that we're like lightly exploring on that front, outside of just being more productive in my role and, my developers, which I'm sure they're leveraging it. Like, a couple things we're looking at is one, I don't know if you saw this, but OpenAI, they released, what was it called? Operator. Basically this, I'm going to not explain this very well, but it's this service it's like an agent that can do things on your behalf. And our idea was that, once a user found a tee time on our platform, instead of sending them to the course's website to, book on their own, we would basically deploy that operator type service, whether it's OpenAI or something else, that actually has, an agent handle the booking for you. And it would just make it a lot more seamless and easy for the user to book a tee time. So that was one thing. And then there are some, pretty innovative startups in the golf world that are really trying to be that kind of, golf AI company. And we've had a few conversations with them. And I think there's some partnerships there to be had. I think they'll kind of be the ones leading the AI side of things. And, we kind of just follow along and kind of work with what their vision is. But yeah, those are kind of some of the early things we're looking at. And then, like I said, just being productive in our role. I use ChatGPT probably 2 hours every day, whether it's writing emails or analyzing spreadsheets, whatever it is. But yeah, you can't ignore AI at this point. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I feel like tennis and golf are two of the sports that are leading the way there just because they are so technical and mechanical, and it's just one person striking a ball at a time. So in the tennis world, we've got swing vision, which after our match, we can see how many forehands we hit, how much topspin we're hitting with, how many backhands. It's so cool to see that. And Ryan, I do look forward to seeing those partnerships that you roll out because I feel like all of you guys are going to cumulatively innovate in the golf world. It'll transcend into tennis and vice versa. So really cool to think about about that. I want to switch gears a little bit because it's fun hearing the mind of the entrepreneur here today, not just talking about Fairway Finder, not just talking about the golf industry. Listeners know that I always ask guests before we get together, what's your zone of genius? And Ryan, I loved your answer. It's so clear and so simple, and it's so succinct as to how you think. You just wrote first principles thinking. Talk to us about how that plays into the way you make decisions.
Oh man, yeah. So I guess I think I put that as kind of my answer there because I am brand new to the golf world, and I think with that there are some downsides. And that one, I don't have a huge network, but there's some upsides as well. And that I don't owe anybody anything, and I can look at things with fresh eyes. And I think a lot of that ignorance actually is going to be helpful, and I think unknowingly difficult to me right now. But I think I'm just going to look at everything with a fresh, set of eyes. And I think the best example of that right now is looking at the existing marketplace model out there and saying, well, hey, this doesn't really work for golfers, and courses seem to be really frustrated with it as well. So let's rethink this, all together. And I think just having that mindset is a really good mindset to have, just because you just always have to question things. And I think a lot of people who, are maybe too deep in the golf world and have just been in it for so long, just kind of accept things the way they are. But I think you just really have to look at things with fresh eyes and kind of think critically yourself to figure out, how these things should be.
Yeah, speaking of those fresh eyes, I have to ask you, I'm so fascinated by this part of your founder story, is that you're a non-technical founder, and we're talking about a very technology-based startup. What's that been like, Ryan?
Yeah, not been easy. But again, I think there's kind of, upsides and downsides to it. I'd say I'm definitely in the market for a technical co-founder, which I think, as we get more and more traction and build the product out further, I think more people will be excited to join my team. Just haven't kind of found that right fit yet. So until that point, we just outsource the technology needs and unfortunately have to raise a little bit of more money to make that happen. Developers are not cheap. And there's just a lot of trial and error with, people who are good fits and aren't. So hasn't been easy, definitely in the market for a technical co-founder, but it just really has to be the right fit. I kind of think about it how does I think about this? Like a Venn diagram with three bubbles. So one bubble is, very talented software engineer. Another bubble is loves golf. And then the third bubble is I would enjoy having a beer with them. So if they're in the center of that Venn diagram, that's kind of my unicorn I'm looking for. And I just don't really want to settle for less than that.
Yes, I love that. Listeners, hey, if you meet those three criteria, Ryan, I love how clearly you've spelled out that Venn diagram for listeners. So if you're tuning into this episode or somebody who you can send Ryan's way, there's a match made in heaven right there for a connection. On that note, Ryan, I love how big you think about this. And I also love the fact that you're a marketer at heart. So with that in mind, what's that target look like? I always think about all these businesses that achieve critical mass, that network effect, where once everybody starts using it, it becomes standard in the industry. Where's your head go as far as your roadmap, your timeline? You talk obviously about getting some funding, getting a technical co-founder on board. So obviously there's a lot of big things to happen there, but I also know you're thinking big at the same time. So what's that growth roadmap look like?
Totally. Yeah, good question. And I probably need to relook at this a little bit, but let's just think of it like the total market opportunity right now. So there's about 30 million on-course golfers. So there's more people that participate in the world of golf, whether it's through off-course golf, which is like simulators, think Top Golf, or things like that. So there's another 30 million golfers who are off-course golfers. And then there's even more who just participate, whether it's in golf media or watch golf. But what we're focused on is those on-course golfers. So the 30 million on-course golfers. And I think it's pretty realistic for us to set a goal to reach about 5 to 10 million of those golfers and essentially be the referral source of, let's say, 10 to 20% of all tee times. I'd say that's kind of our goal within 5 to 6 years to hit that. So yeah, that's kind of how we think about it. And we're definitely thinking big. And, I think there's a big enough gap in terms of what's needed that we're going to fill that and really be a place that people go to find tee times.
Heck yes. I love that, especially as a Topgolf fan. Now I know I'm considered an off-course golfer, so thanks for introducing me to that segment of the market, Ryan. The only question that is canned that I ask at the end of every single episode, it's super broad. You can take it in any direction that you want, and that is, what's your best piece of advice for listeners? It's been so much fun to hear the way you think as an entrepreneur today, and we're being listened to by both entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at all different stages of their own growth journeys. So with that entrepreneurial hat on, what's that one piece of advice that you want to leave them with today?
Oh man, let me think here. Let's see. I don't know why this is what first comes to mind, but this is just kind of my path, and I think it helps financially. I think the first business you should start should maybe be a more cash flow oriented business, and one that, is a low barrier to entry. So for me, that was a marketing agency. Basically anyone with a computer can start a marketing agency, and almost immediately you're profitable if you're kind of your only cost. So I think starting a business that's a good cash flow business is the place to start first, and then take some of those profits and start self-funding your future ventures from there. That's kind of been my path. I mean, let's check in a few years and see if that works out. But that would probably be my best advice.
Yes, Ryan, I don't think that advice is given often enough within the entrepreneurial world. When I see entrepreneurs that their first venture, they're launching online courses and they have no audience, they have no experience of doing the things that they're teaching others to do, I'm just like, go start an agency. Whatever that agency looks like, it's so much easier to provide that service. So actually, in over 1,100 episodes, it's the first time a guest has given that advice, Ryan. Right. So I'm so appreciative of that. Kudos to you right here on the spot. I'm so excited to follow along your journey as well. So for listeners who want to check out all the cool stuff that you're doing at Fairway Finder, drop those links on us. Where should listeners go from here?
I've been pretty active on all social channels. So I think it's my personal profile on LinkedIn. If you want to follow me there, try to post kind of more business and golf course oriented content. Or if you want to be more entertained, you can follow the Fairway Finder channels on Instagram or TikTok. I think it's just fairwayfinder.io on both of those. So yeah, would definitely appreciate the follows.
Yes, and listeners, you already know the drill. We're making it as easy as possible for you to find all of those links down below in the show notes, no matter where it is that you're tuning into today's episode. Ryan, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.